The grand chamber of the galactic Concord hummed with the low murmur of 1,000 voices, alien tongues weaving through the air like threads in a vast tapestry. At the center, the circular dais rose empty, its polished obsidian surface reflecting the holographic stars overhead. Kale Voss, a wiry Lyrith diplomat with iridescent scales that shifted from blue to silver under the lights, stared at that void. His clawed fingers tightened around the edge of his podium. Humanity's seat. 4 cycles now, it had stood unoccupied, a silent accusation amid the bustle of the galaxy's most powerful assembly. Kale glanced sidelong at his companion, Mira Thorne, the only human he'd ever met who still carried the fire of her species' old reputation. She stood rigid beside him, her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, eyes narrowed at the empty chair. Mira wasn't an official delegate, humans hadn't sent one in years, but she'd insisted on coming, her freelance explorer's credentials barely scraping by the Concord's entry protocols. "This isn't right," she muttered, her voice low enough to avoid the translation drones hovering nearby. "They act like we're ghosts already." The assembly droned on, a Vexari elder from the outer rims railing about trade routes disrupted by uncharted nebulae. Kale nodded absently, but his mind raced. The humans had withdrawn a decade ago, citing internal crises on their scattered colonies. No wars, no invasions, just a quiet fade into the void. Yet the galaxy felt it. Pirate raids had spiked along the core lanes, ancient alliances frayed without the humans' knack for mediation. Kale had seen it firsthand on Lyrith Prime. Supply chains buckling, tech imports halted. Humans built things that lasted, bridges between stars that no one else could replicate. As the elder wrapped up, a ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The presiding chair, a hulking Gorith with tusks like curved blades, slammed a fist on the table. "The Concord calls for order. We addressed the vacancy in Sector 7's representation. Proposals?" Silence fell, broken only by the soft whir of environmental controls. Kale felt Mira shift beside him, her hand brushing his arm, a subtle signal they developed during their shared voyages. She was the cautious one, always calculating risks while he leaned toward bold strokes. But today boldness felt like stepping into a black hole. A delegate from the Avian Solari rose, feathers ruffling in agitation. "The seat remains empty by choice. Humanity has abandoned its duties. We should reallocate resources." "No." Myra's voice cut through, sharp and unyielding. Heads turned, drones buzzing toward her. Kale's scales prickled, she wasn't authorized to speak. But she pressed on, stepping forward. "Abandoned? You mean ignored while your empires squabble over scraps? I've seen the reports. Without human arbitrators, the Epsilon Accord is crumbling. Ships lost, world starving." The Gorith presiding leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Identify yourself, mammal." "Mira Thorne, independent surveyor. And I'm here because someone has to say it. The galaxy's trembling because that seat is empty. Not by our choice, something's wrong out there." Murmurs erupted, a wave of clicks and hisses. Kale gripped her elbow, whispering urgently. "Mira, this could get us ejected. Or worse." She shook him off, her jaw set. Better than watching it all unravel. The chamber's tension coiled tighter as the Gorith raised a hand for quiet. But in the shadows of the upper tiers, Kale spotted a flicker, a cloaked figure slipping away, robes whispering against the stone. Not a delegate. His instincts, honed from years navigating Concord politics, screamed trouble. As the debate raged on, he wondered if Myra's outburst had just lit the fuse to something far bigger than an empty chair. Kaler gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the nebula's fringes, violet gases swirling like angry spirits outside the viewport. His claws dug into the worn plasteel, a habit from cycles of piloting through safer voids. Beside him, Mira hunched over the NAV scans, her human fingers dancing across holographic readouts with that infuriating precision only her kind seemed to possess. She'd insisted on joining this fool's errand. Something about unfinished business from the old alliances. "Another grav wave incoming," she said, voice steady but laced with the edge of someone who'd stared down worse. The shuttle bucked, lights flickering as inertial dampeners whined in protest. Kaler's fur bristled. The Crick's homeworld was a day's jump away, but this uncharted drift was chewing through their fuel reserves like a starving void beast. He glanced at the third occupant, slumped in the co-pilot's seat, Thorn, the burly human engineer whose scarred arms spoke of brawls in asteroid mines. Thorn cracked one eye open, grunted, and tapped a panel. Dampeners holding. Barely. You aliens build these things like they're meant to float in a bathtub. Kaler snorted, retracting his claws. Better than your jury-rigged hulks that explode on re-entry. Focus both of you. The Council's beacon is faint, could be interference from the human ghost signals still echoing out here. Mira straightened, her dark eyes narrowing at the screen. A spike appeared, not the steady pulse of the Galactic Concorde's call, but erratic bursts, like a dying star's last flares. That's no ghost. It's a distress pattern. Old human code, pre-withdrawal era. Thorn sat up fully now, his bulk shifting the seat with a creak. Evac protocols. From the Orion front. He leaned in, muscles tensing under his patched jumpsuit. If that's real, we're not alone out here. The shuttle lurched again, harder this time, as if the nebula itself clawed back. Alarms blared, hull integrity dropping. Kaler punched the thrusters, veering toward clearer space, but the scans lit up with debris, twisted metal fragments tumbling in the gas clouds, etched with faded UN insignias. Human relics from the wars that had emptied their seat at the council table. Myra's face paled, but her hands didn't falter. Locking on the signal. It's close inside that cluster. She pointed to a dense knot of wreckage, where shadows hinted at something larger intact. Risky, Kaler muttered, his cautious instincts screaming retreat. But Thorn was already suiting up, grabbing a toolkit with the grim determination of his species. We came this far to find answers about why they left. Ignoring a survivor? That's not grit, that's cowardice. Kaler exchanged a look with Mira, who nodded once, sharp and unyielding. He sighed, plotting the intercept. The shuttle dove in, engines roaring against the pull. As they pierced the debris field, the signal resolved into a battered corvette, its hull scarred by plasma burns and micrometeorites. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud, and the airlock cycled. Thorn led the breach, breather mask fogging with his breath. Inside, emergency lights cast long shadows over corridors littered with frozen ration packs and shattered viewports. No bodies, just echoes of haste. Mira swept her scanner, picking up faint life signs deeper in. One biosignature. Weak but human. They pushed on, Kaler's light pistol drawn, the weight unfamiliar in his grip. A bulkhead groaned under their steps, and Thorn wedged it open with a hydraulic pry. There, in the engine room, huddled a figure. Emaciated, clad in a threadbare envirosuit, wires snaking from jury-rigged panels to keep the core from cold shutdown. The human looked up, eyes wild behind cracked lenses. You're not raiders? His voice rasped through the suit's calm, cracking on the words. Thorn knelt, offering a hand. Crew from the outer rim. Name's Thorn. We're here because the galaxy's gone to hell without your kind holding the line. The survivor, Jax, he gasped, clutched the panel, fingers trembling. The seat, they think we're gone. But the armada's out there, scattered. Fighting shadows in the dark sectors. He coughed, a wet rattle. Plague hit the core worlds. We sealed the gates, but the Xenos, they turned on each other without us mediating. Kaler's ears flattened. The Concorde was fracturing, border skirmishes he dismissed as rumors now made sense. Mira knelt beside Jax, injecting a stim from her medkit. How many left? And why hide here? Jax's gaze sharpened with the dose. Enough to tip the scales. But fuel's gone, weapons depleted. The nebula hides us from the hunters, those corporate fleets picking at the bones. A distant rumble shook the corvette, sensors blaring incoming signatures. Thorn was on his feet, scanning. Not friendly. 3 bogies closing fast. Looks like Vorik scavengers. Kaler cursed in cricks. We can't fight in this scrap heap. Back to the shuttle, now. They hauled Jax, his weight dragging as Mira supported one side, Thorn the other. Alarms wailed as they sealed the airlock behind them. The shuttle undocked with a jolt, engines flaring to life. Through the viewport, the corvette's lights winked out, a silent pyre in the nebula's glow. Jax slumped into a seat, whispering coordinates to Mira. Head for Epsilon Drift. There's a fleet rendezvous. Tell them. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Stellaris engines vibrating through her bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with static, the nebulous tendrils clawing at the ship's shields, but it was the incoming transmission that set her teeth on edge. "Patch it through," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The holographic display shimmered to life, resolving into the stern face of Ambassador Krell of the Vexery Alliance. His scaled features twisted in what humans called a frown, though Alara knew it was more like a warning hiss among his kind. "Captain Voss, your vessel's trajectory brings you perilously close to the Korath Drift. The Council's edict is clear: no unauthorized entry. Humanity's absence from the galactic seat leaves this sector under our joint stewardship, but your ingenuity has a habit of complicating matters." Alara leaned forward, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the console. Beside her, Lieutenant Jax Harlan, the ship's wiry engineer, shot her a sidelong glance, his eyes sharp with that trademark sarcasm. He mouthed diplomat speak for back off, but she ignored him, focusing on Krell. "Ambassador, we're not here for a joyride. The Stellaris detected anomalous energy signatures, something that's scrambling our NAV systems and yours, if your reports are accurate. If we don't investigate, that drift could swallow half the trade lanes." Krell's frills quivered, a sign of agitation Alara had learned to read during their tense negotiations on Epsilon Station. "Your human investigations have led to incidents before. The seat stands empty because your kind withdrew after the accord, yet here you are, probing where you're not welcome. Turn back or face interdiction." The transmission cut with a sharp buzz, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Jax snorted, pushing back from his station where readouts scrolled like frantic code. "E frantic insects. Friendly as ever. Vexery playing gatekeeper again. What's the play, Cap? We push through, or let the galaxy's bureaucrats handle their own mess?" Alara stood, pacing to the viewport where the nebulous purple haze pressed against the reinforced glass, a swirling graveyard of ionized gas and forgotten wrecks. The Korath Drift wasn't just a hazard, it was a scar from the old wars, where alien fleets had clashed and left behind unstable pockets of reality itself. Humanity's seat at the Galactic Council had been their leverage, their voice in deciding how to tame such places. But after the betrayal at Vega Prime, humans had walked away, leaving the others to squabble over the void. Now, with comms failing across the sector and ships vanishing, the old alliances were fraying. "We push," she decided, turning to her small crew. Jax nodded, already diving into the engineering panel, his hands a blur over the controls. Dr. Mira Chin, the xenobiologist tucked in the corner with her tablet, looked up from her scans, her calm demeanor unbroken. "The signatures match relic tech, pre-accord. If it's awakening, it could rewrite local physics. We need samples, not standoffs." Alarms blared suddenly, red light strobing across the bridge. Jax cursed under his breath. "Shields at 60%. Something's tugging us," gravitic pull from the drift's edge. Alara dropped back into her chair, buckling in as the ship lurched. The initial plan had been simple: skirt the nebula, deploy probes, report back to the fringe colonies. But Krell's warning carried weight. The Vexery patrols weren't far, and a direct confrontation could reignite old grudges. "Full thrust, evasive pattern delta," she ordered. The Stellaris groaned, engines flaring as it fought the invisible current. Through the viewport, a shadow detached from the nebula, a jagged silhouette too angular to be natural. Not a patrol ship. Something older, hungrier. Jax's voice cut through the tension, laced with grim humor. "Cap, if that's what I think it is, our probes just became a bad idea. Adapting shields now, human grit versus ancient scrap. Let's see who blinks first." Myra's fingers flew across her console, pulling up spectral data that painted the anomaly in stark lines. A derelict war form, its hull cracked like eggshell, leaking exotic particles that warped the stars behind it. "It's not dormant. Reacting to our approach. We backfire on this and the drift claims us all." Alara's jaw set, her mind racing through contingencies. The cost was already mounting, shields failing, engines straining, but turning back meant abandoning the first real lead on why the galaxy was unraveling without humanity's steady hand. "Hold course. We're not leaving empty-handed." The ship shuddered onward, the shadow growing, the crew's resolve hardening like forged steel in the face of the unknown. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge vibrating through her exoskeletal frame like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with data streams from the derelict station ahead, its skeletal remains tumbling slowly against the void. "Status on the docking clamps?" she barked, her mandibles clicking in rhythm with her urgency. Lieutenant Crix, her wiry navigator, hunched over his console, his tentacles dancing across the holographic keys. "Clamps engaged, Captain. But the station's power grid is fried. Minimal life support, no response from automated systems." His voice carried that cautious edge, the one that always made her want to prod him into action. Crix was reliable, but he second-guessed every shadow. From the engineering alcove, Dr. Thorne's gravelly human accent cut through. "Hull integrity at 87%, but we're picking up anomalous energy signatures. Not xenotech, not ours. It's erratic." Thorne was the anomaly here, a lone human consultant, broad-shouldered and scarred from wars long forgotten by the Alliance. He joined their crew 6 cycles ago, a refugee from the fringes, with eyes that saw patterns where others saw chaos. Ilera had hired him for his ingenuity, not his species' reputation for reckless bravery. The airlock hissed open behind them, and Ensign Mira, the young security officer, stepped onto the bridge, her armored suit sealed tight. Mira was earnest to a fault, her scales still molting from her recent promotion. "Team's ready, Captain. But scans show movement inside, biosigns faint but humanoid." Ilera rose, her claws scraping the deck. Humanity's seat had stood empty for a decade, their worlds gone silent after the Veil incident, a cataclysm no one could explain. The galaxy trembled in their absence, trade routes collapsing, alliances fraying. Now this station, a neutral relay once buzzing with human diplomats, floated like a ghost. If it held clues to their vanishing, it could rewrite everything. But the risk gnawed at her. Radiation spikes, possible traps. "Thorne, you're with Mira. Crix, monitor from here. We extract data and get out, no heroics." Thorne flashed a wry grin, hefting his toolkit. "Heroics are what got your alliance this far, Captain. Or so I've heard." He followed Mira into the corridor, the inner airlock cycling shut. Ilera watched the feed on the secondary screen as they breached the station's outer hatch. The corridor beyond was a tomb of twisted metal and flickering emergency lights, frost rhyming the walls from breached seals. Myra's helmet lamp swept the debris, catching glints of discarded data slates and shattered viewports. "Clear so far," Mira reported, her voice steady but laced with tension. "Heading to Central Core." Thorne moved with that human fluidity, ducking under a collapsed beam without breaking stride. He knelt by a sparking panel, pulling wires with practiced hands. "This isn't decay, it's sabotage. Look at the cuts, precise like plasma shears." His fingers traced a gash, and suddenly the lights surged, a low groan echoing through the station. "Captain?" Crix yelped from his station. "Energy spike, it's building." On screen, Mira spun, weapon raised. Shadows shifted in the corridor ahead, not debris but forms, silhouettes unfolding from alcoves, humanoid but wrong, their limbs elongated, skin pale and veined with unnatural glow. "Contacts. Multiple. They're not registering on bioscans properly." Thorne fired a burst from his sidearm, the shots illuminating twisted faces, eyes like voids. One lunged, faster than physics allowed, claws raking Myra's armor. She staggered, returning fire, but the creature dissolved into smoke, reforming behind Thorne. He twisted, slamming his toolkit into its chest with a crack that echoed like bone. "Evacuate," Ilera ordered, slamming the override. The docking clamps disengaged with a shudder, but the station's tractor beam activated, locking them in place. Alarms blared as the ship bucked. Crix's tentacles flew. "Power surge incoming, it's pulling us in." Thorne and Mira burst back through the airlock, dragging a salvaged core module between them. "We got partial data," Thorne gasped, sealing his helmet. "But those things, they're echoes, remnants of the Veil. Human tech gone wrong." The view screen showed the station fracturing, tendrils of energy lashing out like whips. One caught the hull, scoring a gash that vented atmosphere. Ilera braced as sparks flew from consoles. The galaxy's tremble had found them, and humanity's absence felt heavier than ever, a void that birthed monsters. Mira slumped against the bulkhead, clutching her side where the armor had held barely. "Captain, that data, it mentions a signal outgoing to human space." Ilara's mandibles tightened. A lead, but at what cost? The ship lurched free, engines straining, leaving the station to its doom. Thorn met her gaze, his human grit unyielding. "We follow it?" Or the echoes spread. The stars streaked by as they fled, the module's faint pulse a promise and a curse. The Alliance would demand answers, but this crew had tasted the edge of the unknown. Trust forged in fire, they pressed on, the empty seat's shadow lengthening behind them. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with static as they punched through the nebula's edge, purple tendrils of gas swirling like angry spirits. Beside her, Jax, the wiry engineer with grease-streaked cheeks and a perpetual squint, tapped furiously at his console. "Shields holding at 60%, he muttered, his voice tight. "But if that ion storm hits us broadside, we're cooked." Across the cramped cockpit, Lyra, the xenobiologist from the fringe colony, leaned forward, her scales shimmering under the dim lights. She was the cautious one, always calculating risks, her clawed fingers drumming on her knee. "We can't afford delays. The Council's beacon is fading, another hour and we'll lose the trail entirely." Her eyes, wide and golden, flicked to Ilara. No one had expected humans to vanish like this, the galaxy's mediators gone without a trace, leaving alliances frayed and borders bleeding into war. Ilara nodded, her jaw set. She'd led salvage ops before, but nothing like this. The empty seat in the Galactic Concorde had triggered it all, petty squabbles escalating to blockades, entire systems starving under embargoes. They were here to find answers, or at least proof that humanity hadn't abandoned them. "Push the engines, Jax. We skirt the storm, not through it." The shuttle lurched as Jax complied, thrusters firing in short, desperate bursts. Alarms blared, red lights painting their faces in bloody hues. Lyra braced against the bulkhead, whispering a prayer to her world's ancient stars. Outside, the nebula churned, a colossal wall of plasma that could fry their circuits in seconds. Ilara's mind raced. If they failed here, the fragile truce she'd brokered back on the outpost would shatter. Real lives hung in the balance, colonies cut off, refugees piling up like driftwood. A sudden jolt rocked the ship, sparks erupting from a panel near Jax's feet. "Hull breach in engineering," he shouted, unstrapping and diving for the access hatch. Ilara slammed the emergency seal, buying them seconds. The view screen cleared for a heartbeat, revealing the beacon's pulse. A faint, insistent winking amid the chaos, like a heartbeat refusing to quit. Lyra's voice cut through the din there, deviations in the plasma flow. "Natural corridor but narrow. If we angle 5 degrees starboard." Ilara saw it too, a sliver of calm slicing through the maelstrom. Gritting her teeth, she yanked the controls. The shuttle groaned, metal protesting as it threaded the needle. Ion winds buffeted them, but they held, emerging on the far side with a final, shuddering sigh. Jax re-emerged, wiping sweat from his brow, a makeshift patch clinging to his coveralls. "She's ugly but she'll fly." Ilara allowed herself a breath, the stars sharpening into focus. The beacon grew stronger now, pulling them toward the unknown. But as the nebula receded, a new shadow loomed on the sensors. A rival scout vessel, Krell markings clear and hostile. They'd been followed. The chase was on, and the galaxy's trembling had just found its echo in their engines. Elena gripped the console's edge as the shuttle bucked against the gravitational shear, the view screen fracturing into static bursts of nebular gas. Marco's fingers flew across the auxiliary panel, rerouting power from life support to the stabilizers. Another minute of this and they'd be breathing vacuum. "Hold her steady, Cap," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. "This isn't a joyride through the belt, it's like wrestling a black hole with a toothpick." Zrix chittered from the co-pilot's nest, its mandibles clicking in rhythmic alarm. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the chaos outside, a swirling maelstrom of debris where the outer ring of the Epsilon gate should have been. "The readings confirm it," Zrix said, voice a dry rasp over the hum of straining engines. "The anomaly has consumed the relay nodes. Our path to the core worlds is severed unless we improvise." Kale, perched on the jump seat with talons dug into the padding, let out a low trill of frustration. The avian's feathers ruffled, iridescent blues shifting to agitated grays. Improvise? The Vorik fleet is closing from the flank. They'll pick us off like groundlings if we linger. He jabbed a wingtip at the tactical display, where red icons pulsed like wounds in the starfield. Elena nodded, her jaw set. The plan had been simple. Slip through the gate's fringe, link up with the Alliance scouts, and deliver the data crystal proving the anomaly's artificial origin. Someone or something was unraveling the galaxy's spine. But the shear had hit harder than projected, shredding their escort drones and forcing an emergency dive into the debris field. Now, with the crystal clutched in her flight suit's pocket, she felt its weight like an anchor. Options, she said, voice cutting through the din. The shuttle lurched again, a chunk of twisted alloy glancing off the hull with a metallic screech. Marco glanced up, his usual smirk absent. We could vent the cargo bay, use the thrust to slingshot past the shear. Risky, might fry the NAV core, but it'd buy us distance from the Vorik. Zrix's antennae twitched. Unwise. The Vorik sensors would detect the plasma bloom. They seek the crystal as much as we guard it. Kale's eyes narrowed, beak parting in a hiss. Then we fight. My people do not flee shadows. Elena waited, the ship groaning under her boots. The Vorik weren't mindless raiders. They were opportunists, picking at the Alliance's seams since humanity's vanishing. If they got the crystal, the proof that the anomaly was a weaponized rift, born from abandoned human tech, would vanish with it. No more trembling galaxy, just conquest. No, she decided, punching coordinates into the main drive. We ghost them. Marco prepped the stealth shroud, divert everything to emitters. Zrix, spoof our signature as wreckage. Kale, man the point defense. If they get close, make em regret it. The engineer hesitated, then complied, his hands a blur. You're betting the farm on jury rigging, Cap. If the shroud fails mid-burn. It won't. Elena met his gaze, the resolve in her eyes mirroring the grit that had kept her crew alive through a dozen forsaken outposts. The shuttle's lights dimmed as power shifted, the hum deepening to a predatory growl. Zrix initiated the spoof, the console beeping affirmatively as false debris pings scattered across enemy scopes. Kale loaded the turrets, his movements precise, a warrior's focus sharpening the air. The Vorik signatures hesitated, then veered toward phantom hulks. Elena eased the throttle, the shuttle slipping into the debris wake like a shadow among ruins. A single jagged spire of the old gate loomed ahead, its surface etched with faded human script, warnings from an era when seats at the galactic table were filled, not empty. But as they cleared the shear, a new alert pierced the cabin, the crystal's casing warming in her pocket, pulsing with an inner light. Not just data. A beacon. And it was calling home. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the bridge, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Crix gripped the armrest of his command chair, his chitinous fingers clicking against the worn alloy. The storm outside the viewport raged on, a swirling maelstrom of ionized particles that battered the hull of the Endeavor with relentless fury. Their escape from the derelict human station had bought them time, but not enough. The warp core was destabilizing, its containment fields fraying under the assault, and Zara's latest patch was holding by threads thinner than a whisper. Status, Zara? Crix's voice cut through the hum of straining engines, steady despite the tremor in his mandibles. She didn't look up from her station, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the cascade of error codes scrolling across her screen. Containment at 62%. If we push the injectors any harder, we'll breach. The human schematics we pulled from the station, they're unlike anything in our databases. Adaptive shielding, but it requires a neural interface we don't have. Lorne, lounging against the navigation panel with feigned nonchalance, snorted. Neural interface? That's code 4, we're flying blind with ghost tech. Remember that old spacer tale? Humans wired their ships straight to their squishy brains. No wonder they vanished, probably fried themselves trying to outthink the stars. Crix shot him a glare, but there was no heat in it. Lawrence Witt was a bomb in moments like this, a spark against the encroaching dark. Focus, navigator. Plot us a vector out of this nebula. We can't afford another surge. Lawrence's tentacles flew over the controls, tracing holographic paths that twisted and snapped like live wires. Aye, Captain. But this soup's thicker than your ex's excuses. Best I can do is skim the edge. Might shave off some velocity by Zara a minute. The ship groaned as Lorne executed the maneuver, a deep vibration rumbling through the deck plates. Alarms blared briefly, then silenced under Zara's quick override. For a heartbeat, the storm's fury seemed to lessen, the viewport clearing to reveal fleeting glimpses of fractured asteroids tumbling in the void. Crix allowed himself a breath, the acrid tang of overheated circuits filling his spiracles. But hope curdled fast. A new warning chime pierced the air, structural integrity dropping in the aft sections. Zara's hands paused, her crest flattening in alarm. It's the auxiliary thrusters. The human alloy we salvaged for repairs. It's resonating with the storm's frequencies. Cracking along the seams. Crix unstrapped and rose, his armored frame casting a broad silhouette. Show me. They clustered around the engineering display, the three of them a tight knot amid the chaos. The schematic pulsed red, Fisher's spider-webbing from the jury-rigged panels. Zara traced a line with her claw. We integrated it wrong. Thought it was just denser plating, but it's reactive. The storm's turning our fix against us. Lorne leaned in, his eye stalks twitching. Clever bastards, those humans. Built for adaptation, not brute force. What if we reverse the polarity? Flip the resonance back on the storm? Zara's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Risky. Could amplify the effect, tear us apart from the inside. Or it could shield us, Crix said, his voice firm. He met their gazes, seeing the flicker of doubt mirrored in their eyes. The Endeavor wasn't just a ship, it was their lifeline, the last vessel carrying the fragile Alliance's hope back to the core worlds. Lose it here, 1,000 light-years from aid, and the galaxy's fragile peace unraveled further. Humanity's empty seat at the Council would echo with more than absence. It would ring with defeat. Do it, Crix decided. Lorne, align us for the flip. Zara, route power through the human core fragment we found. If this works, we punch through. If not. He didn't finish. No need. They moved as one, a symphony of purpose amid the storm's howl. Zara's claws danced over the injectors, channeling the exotic energy from the salvaged artifact, a glowing shard of what the logs called quantum lattice, etched with symbols no translator could fully decipher. Lorne's vectors locked in, the ship tilting into a daring arc. The first pulse hit like a thunderclap. The hull sang, a high-pitched keen that set Crix's teeth on edge. Lights dimmed to near blackness, emergency protocols kicking in with a hiss of venting plasma. Through the viewport, the nebula ignited, tendrils of plasma lashing out as if the void itself recoiled. Containment holding, barely. Zara shouted, her voice strained. Resonance inverting, now. A shudder rippled through the Endeavor, metal protesting as the human alloy awoke. Fractures sealed with a flash, the plating glowing faintly blue, repelling the storm's fury like water off oiled scales. The ship surged forward, breaking free of the nebula's grasp, stars wheeling into sharp focus ahead. Cheers erupted, brief and raw. Lorne slapped Crix's shoulder. Told you, Ghost Tech saves the day. Humans might be gone, but their tricks linger. Crix nodded, sinking back into his chair, but his gaze lingered on the fading glow of the nebula. The maneuver had worked, but scans showed the warp core scarred, efficiency down 20%. They'd limp home if they made it at all. And the artifact? Dimmer now, its light pulsing weakly as if exhausted. Set course for the relay station, he ordered, the weight of command settling heavier. And log this. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the bridge of the enduring flame, turning the once pristine consoles into jagged silhouettes. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The ship shuddered again, a deep groan echoing through the hull as another micrometeorite grazed the shields. They were down to 47% power, and the nearest relay station was still 3 jumps away, if the engines held. Status, Lieutenant Kale, she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Kale, ever the cautious one, hunched over his flickering panel, his broad shoulders tense under the strain of flickering holograms. Shields at minimum viable, Captain. The debris field is thickening, looks like remnants of an old mining op. If we push the engines harder, we risk a cascade failure. His words came out clipped, practical, no room for panic. That's what she liked about him. In a crew of hotshots he was the anchor. From the navigation station, Mira leaned forward, her fingers dancing across the controls with the precision of someone who'd outflown blockades before. Witty under fire, she shot Kale a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Come on, Lieutenant, where's your sense of adventure? We've danced through worse than this scrapyard. Plot a zigzag through the outer ring, should buy us some breathing room." Elara nodded, weighing the options. The challenge wasn't just the debris, it was the why. 3 days ago they'd picked up a distress beacon from the outer rim, faint and garbled but unmistakably human in origin, or what passed for it in this post-Exodus galaxy. Humanity's seat had stood empty for decades, ever since the vanishing when entire colonies blinked out like faulty stars. The galaxy had trembled then, alliances fracturing without the unpredictable humans to mediate or innovate. Now, whispers of survivors pulled ships like theirs into the void, chasing ghosts. Execute the zigzag, Mira. But keep it tight, no heroics. Elara's gaze flicked to the viewport, where the debris field swirled like a cosmic storm, chunks of alloy glinting against the black. One wrong move, and the enduring flame would join the wreckage, another forgotten casualty. The ship lurched as Mira engaged the thrusters, a sharp burst that sent sparks flying from an overhead panel. Kale cursed under his breath, patching it on the fly. Power draw spiking, rerouting from life support. We'll feel the chill soon. Elara felt it already, a draft seeping through the seals, carrying the metallic tang of recycled air. She stood, pacing to the central display, where the beacon's signal pulsed weakly. It wasn't just a call for help. Embedded in the code were fragments of old human tech schematics, something about adaptive shielding, the kind that had once turned the tide in the Great Schism. If they could reach it, retrieve it, maybe the Council would finally acknowledge what they'd lost. Not just bodies but the grit that built empires from scraps. A proximity alarm blared, red lights strobing. Myra's hands blurred. Incoming cluster, evasive. The enduring flame twisted, engines whining in protest. A massive girder loomed in the viewport, tumbling end over end, its surface pitted and scarred. Elara braced as it whipped past, close enough to rattle the deck plates. But they cleared it, emerging into a brief pocket of calm. Kale exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. That was too close. Captain, we should abort. The risk? No. Elara cut him off, her tone firm but not unkind. She'd seen crews fracture under doubt before. This beacon could change everything. The galaxy's trembling because we forgot how to adapt. Humans didn't vanish without leaving tools behind. We retrieve it or we drift like the rest. Mira chuckled, though it was strained. Spoken like a true descendant. All right, plotting the final approach. Hang on, looks like the source is wedged in that central wreck. The ship dove back in, the debris closing like jaws. Tension coiled in Elara's chest as they threaded the needle, sparks from near misses illuminating the crew's focused faces. Kale monitored systems with quiet efficiency, Mira quipped about dancing with death, but Elara saw the cost. A flickering console here, a strained weld there. One more hit, and the consequences would be tangible, air hissing out, lights dying, the void claiming them. Then, the beacon sharpened on sensors, a derelict pod half buried in the hulk of an ancient freighter. Mira whooped softly. Got eyes on it. Docking in 10. As the enduring flame maneuvered into position, grapples extending with a hydraulic hiss, Elara allowed herself a breath. But the shudder returned, deeper this time, not debris but something internal. Alarms wailed anew. Engine breach. Kale shouted, slamming controls. We can't hold position. Elara's mind raced. Pull away and the beacon slips away forever. Stay and they all pay the price. Mira locked the grapples. Kale, isolate the breach, buy us time. We're not leaving empty-handed. The crew moved as one, their actions a testament to the human spark that hadn't fully dimmed. Outside, the debris field churned, indifferent to their struggle, but inside resolve burned brighter than the failing lights. Kaler gripped the console edge as the shuttle lurched through the nebulous swirling gases, the hull groaning under the strain. The violet tendrils outside clawed at the viewscreen, distorting the stars into mocking smears. Beside him, Mira adjusted the thrusters with steady hands, her scales flickering with suppressed anxiety. Shields at 40%, she murmured, voice tight. If we push harder we might fry the core. Torin, crammed into the co-pilot's seat, snorted. Fry it and be done. Better than letting those void beasts chew us like rations. His claws tapped an erratic rhythm on his knee plate, the warrior's bravado cracking just enough to show the fear beneath. Kaler shot him a glance, reliable in a brawl, less so when plans hinged on finesse. The nebula wasn't natural. Scans confirmed it months ago, a remnant of the old human warp experiments gone catastrophic. What was meant to shortcut the galaxy had birthed this monster, devouring ships and signals alike. And now, with humanity's seat vacant in the council halls, no one knew how to navigate it. The Alliance had sent them, 3 misfits from fringe worlds, to retrieve the lost data core from a derelict human station at its heart. One core, they said, could map a safe path and stabilize the thing. Fail, and the nebula would expand, swallowing trade routes and colonies. Kaler's mandibles clicked in frustration. Their first probe drone had vanished without a ping. The second returned as molten scrap. Ease off the engines, he said, eyes on the flickering NAV chart. We circle once more, probe for the station's signature. Mira nodded, but Torin leaned forward, growling. Circling's for cowards. We rammed through, I've faced worse in the pits. The shuttle shuddered as a gas plume buffeted them, lights dimming. Alarms wailed, and Kaler felt the pull, like invisible fingers tugging at the ship. Myra's fingers flew over controls, rerouting power, but the readings spiked. Incoming anomaly, it's locking on. A shadow loomed in the view screen, coiling like smoke made solid, tendrils probing the shields. Torin unstrapped, grabbing his pulse rifle. I'll suit up, cut it off. Kaler grabbed his arm. No. Last time the beast dissolved the hull patch in seconds. They argued in bursts, voices overlapping as the ship bucked. Myra's plan had been elegant. Slip in low, use the nebulous currents to mask their approach. But the currents had shifted, turning ally to foe. A jolt threw Kaler against the bulkhead, pain lancing his side. The view screen cracked, spider webbing. Divert to auxiliary. Mira yelled, but Torin was already moving, slamming the manual override. The shuttle spun, engines whining in protest, and for a heartbeat they broke free, hurtling toward a clearer patch, the station's faint beacon pulsing like a dying heart. Panting, Kaler straightened. That was too close. We adapt or we die. Mira wiped sweat from her brow, her wits surfacing in a wry smile. Next time we bring human ghosts to guide us. Torin laughed, a bark that echoed relief. But as the beacon strengthened, Kaler wondered if the core held more than data, if it whispered of the ingenuity that birthed this hell, and maybe, just maybe, the key to ending it. They closed in, the station's silhouette emerging from the haze. A jagged relic, halls breached and silent, waiting for hands bold enough to claim its secrets. The nebula whispered against the hull, a promise of more trials ahead. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console, her knuckles whitening against the dim glow of the bridge. The Krellian dreadnought shuddered as another plasma volley skimmed its shields, the hull groaning like a beast in pain. Beside her, Dr. Thorne muttered calculations under his breath, his fingers dancing over holographic displays that flickered with erratic data streams. Shields at 30%, he said, voice steady but edged with fatigue. If we divert power to the engines now we might outrun them, but the rift generator could overload. Ilara shot him a glance, her eyes sharp beneath the sweat-dampened fringe of her dark hair. She'd always been the one to push forward, the captain who turned retreats into calculated risks. Outrun the Vexery? They'd pick us off like flies. No, we stick to the plan. Reroute auxiliary power to the forward arrays. Buy us time. Her order cut through the alarms, and the engineer at the lower station complied without hesitation, the ship lurching as energy surged. The view screen dominated the forward wall, painting the chaos in stark relief. The swirling maw of the uncharted nebula ahead, its tendrils of ionized gas pulsing like veins, and behind them the Vexery pursuit fleet, sleek, predatory shadows closing in. What had started as a diplomatic envoy to reclaim humanity's abandoned seat in the Galactic Concorde had spiraled into this. A desperate flight through forbidden space, chased by zealots who saw any trace of human tech as heresy. Ilara's team, herself, Thorne the Xenotech specialist, Mira the young navigator with her unerring instincts, and Gritch the grizzled mechanic from the outer colonies, were all that remained of the expedition. The others had fallen to ambushes or the nebula's treacherous storms. Mira swiveled in her chair, her face pale but determined, fingers tracing the NAV chart's glowing paths. "Captain, the nebula's interference is worsening. I can plot a course through the dense core, but it'll fry our sensors. Blind navigation, risky as hell." She paused, chewing her lip, the weight of her caution showing in the way she glanced at Alara for approval. Mira had joined the mission fresh from the academy, full of book smarts but untested in the void's cruelties. "Do it," Alara replied, her voice a low command that brooked no doubt. She trusted Myra's gut. The girl had spotted the Vexery tailing them 2 jumps back, when the scanners showed nothing. As the ship banked sharply, diving into the nebula's embrace, colors bloomed across the screen, violets and crimsons bleeding into the black, like wounds in the fabric of space. Alara's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. The artifact, a crystalline seat etched with human glyphs, had activated partially during their escape from the Concord hub, broadcasting a signal that drew the Vexery like moths. It wasn't just a relic, it was a beacon, perhaps a warning or a call. Thorn cross-referenced the artifact's output with the nebula's magnetic fields. "If it's resonating, we use that, turn their pursuit into our shield." He nodded, diving into the data while Mira fine-tuned the course, her hands steady now. The ship twisted through a narrow channel of plasma flares, the view screen filling with a single breathtaking image. A colossal gas giant's silhouette emerging from the haze, ringed by debris that caught the light like shattered jewels. But the Vexery were closing, their lead ship firing a warning shot that lit the bridge in harsh white. "They're matching our vector," Mira warned, tension coiling in her voice. "Hold course," Alara said, leaning forward. In that moment she felt the weight of it all, the galaxy's tremor without humanity's steady hand, the Concord fracturing under old grudges. But her crew, pieced from the edges of civilization, was fighting back with grit born of necessity. The artifact's hum grew louder, vibrating through the deck, and Thorn's eyes widened. "It's aligning. Captain, if we pulse it now," a backfire rocked them first. The Vexery's next volley struck true, shearing through shields and carving a gash along the port side. Lights flickered, gravity stuttered, and Gritch's curse echoed up from below. Alara braced as debris floated free, her mind flashing to the cost. Lives lost, the mission teetering. But failure wasn't an option, not when the galaxy hung in the balance. "Engage the pulse," she ordered, voice iron. Thorn slammed the command, and the dim glow of the auxiliary consoles flickered across Kale's scales, casting long shadows in the cramped cockpit of the salvage drone. He'd been at the controls for hours, fingers dancing over the haptic interface, coaxing the ancient human ship from its icy tomb in the Oort fringes. The vessel, a relic from the expansion era, groaned under the strain of revival, its fusion core humming faintly, like a beast stirring from hibernation. Beside him, Mira hunched over her scanner, her feathered crest twitching with impatience. "It's stabilizing," she muttered, "but the NAV systems are fried. If we push her out of orbit without a proper burn, we'll slingshot right into the debris field." Jax, sprawled in the jump seat with his toolkit splayed across his lap, snorted. "Fried? That's optimistic. Half the relays are vaporized. Humans built these things to last, but not against a neutron storm." His voice carried that familiar edge, wry, unflinching, the mark of someone who'd stared down black holes and walked away whistling. Kale shot him a glance, the diplomat's caution warring with the engineer's bravado. They'd come this far on a hunch. The empty seat in the Galactic Concorde wasn't abandonment, it was a signal buried in forgotten hulls like this one. But now, with the Concorde's armada closing in, convinced this was piracy, not salvation, the stakes clawed at Kale's resolve. A sharp alert pierced the hum, proximity warning. Myra's scanner lit up, red icons swarming like angry wasps. "They're here. 3 cruisers, Concorde insignia. They must have traced our emissions." Her talons clicked against the panel, urgency sharpening her usually measured tone. Kale's mandibles clicked in response, a habit from his homeworld's tense negotiations. "Hail them. Buy time." He didn't wait for agreement, activating the comms with a swipe. The channel crackled open and a stern voice boomed through, "Admiral Vex, the very enforcer who dismissed their petition weeks ago. Intruders, this is Concorde vessel Epsilon Prime. You are in violation of salvage protocols. Power down and prepare for boarding." Vex's words dripped with authority, the kind that had kept the galaxy in line since humanity's vanishing. Jax leaned forward, his grin feral under the cockpit lights. "Admiral, old friend, or whatever passes for it in your line of work. We're not thieves. We're historians. This ship's got data that explains why your precious seat's collecting dust." He patched in a fragment of the core dump, garbled logs of human explorers charting wormhole anomalies, warnings about a cascade failure that had ripped through their fleets. Not war, not betrayal, a cosmic fluke, a rift that swallowed colonies whole. Silence stretched, broken only by the ship's creaks. Then Vex's voice returned, colder. "Fabrications. Humans fled or died out. Stand down or we fire." The scanners confirmed it, weapons hot, targeting locks painting their drone. Myra's crest flattened. "They're not listening. Evac protocols?" Kale shook his head, eyes fixed on the thawing view screen. The human ship's hull, pitted and scarred, began to gleam under emergency lights, a colossal shadow unfurling in the void. Their initial plan had been simple: extract the data core, slip away. But the ship, awakening, had latched onto their drone's signals, its AI fragments sinking involuntarily. Now it pulled them in, a magnetic embrace that could either save or doom them. "Override it," Jack said, already prying open an access panel. Sparks flew as he jury-rigged a bypass, his hands a blur. "Humans luba redundancias." There, emergency thrust. The drone shuddered, decoupling with a metallic screech, but not before the human vessel's engines ignited in a brilliant flare. It lurched free of the ice, a behemoth reborn, its trajectory veering toward the cruisers. Vex comms erupted in chaos, alarms, shouts. The human ship wasn't attacking, it was broadcasting, full spectrum, unencrypted. Logs flooding the net, coordinates of lost human arcs, proofs of the rift's lingering threat, a plea encoded in every frequency. "They're seeing it," Mira whispered, her voice laced with awe. "The truth." But the cruisers didn't yield. Disruptor fire lanced out, grazing the drone's flank. Alarms wailed as systems faltered. Kale gripped the controls, heart pounding in his chitinous chest. Jax slapped a patch over the breach, cursing fluidly. "Not today. Punch it," toward the ship. Mira nodded, rerouting power. The drone surged, riding the human vessel's wake, dodging return fire by scant meters. As they closed the gap, docking clamps engaging with a solid thunk, Kale felt the galaxy shift. The Concorde would have to reckon with this. Humanity's seat empty, yes, but their ingenuity echoing still. Vex's voice cut through one last time, strained. "Cease fire. All vessels stand down." But the damage was done. The drone's hull smoked, Mira nursed a gash from debris, and Jax's toolkit lay scattered, one tool lost to the void. They'd won a reprieve, but the rift's shadow loomed larger, demanding more than words to mend. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her shuttle's command chair, the vibrations from the engines humming through her bones like a distant earthquake. The view screen flickered with a chaotic dance of debris, shattered hulls from the alien fleet that had blockaded the council chamber. Beside her, Jax, the wiry engineer with his perpetual squint, tapped furiously at the console, rerouting power from non-essentials. "Shields at 30%, he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "If they fire again, we're vapor." Across the cramped cockpit, Ambassador Lyra leaned forward, her eyes locked on the transmission feed. The Krellian admiral's face loomed there, scaled and unyielding, his voice a guttural rumble through the translator. "Human, you trespass on sacred neutral space. The seat remains empty by decree. Withdraw or face annihilation." Lyra's fingers clenched around the data pad, the one holding the forged alliance codes she pieced together from scavenged transmissions during their desperate evasion. Ilara shot her a glance, the weight of their gambit pressing down. They'd come this far on grid alone, slipping past patrols, jury-rigging the shuttles cloaking from salvaged parts, all to reach the Galactic Concorde's heart. Humanity's absence had left a void, exploited by the Krellians to seize control, but Lyra's plan hinged on proving Earth's claim through sheer ingenuity, not force. No armies, just 3 souls against the galaxy's inertia. "Admiral," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "that decree was issued before the Veil storm severed our links. We've restored the old protocols, Your own archives will confirm it. She uploaded the codes, a patchwork of human algorithms intertwined with Krellian encryption, something Jax had hacked together in the dead of night while Ilara piloted through asteroid fields. The Admiral's eyes narrowed, his frills flaring in suspicion. A pause stretched, broken only by the ping of incoming scans. Jax whispered, "They're probing us. If it doesn't match." He trailed off, but Ilara knew. Failure meant not just their deaths but the end of any human voice in the stars. Then, a shift. The Admiral's expression cracked, just a fraction. Surprise, perhaps recognition. "The signatures align," he growled. "But why now? Your kind vanished cycles ago." Lyra leaned closer to the pickup, her words measured. "Because we adapt. We build bridges from wreckage. Let us take our seat, and we'll show you how to mend the fractures you've widened." The fleet's weapons powered down, tractor beams latching onto the shuttle instead of lasers. As they were pulled toward the gleaming spires of the Concorde station, Ilara exhaled, her shoulders sagging. Jax punched the air with a whoop, but Lyra's gaze lingered on the empty void where Earth's representatives should have stood for so long. Docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk. They stepped out into the vast chamber, the air thick with the sense of a dozen worlds. Ozone from Vexery Tech, floral tang from Sylph Envoys. The council seats encircled a holographic nexus, humanity's pedestal stark and unoccupied amid the bustle. Whispers rippled as the trio approached, Ilara's boots echoing on the polished floor, Jax scanning for threats, Lyra clutching the pad like a talisman. The presiding elder, a luminous being of swirling light, gestured them forward. The codes verify. The seat reopens. Murmurs swelled to a roar, approval, outrage, curiosity. Lyra took the step up, settling into the chair that hummed to life beneath her, interfaces blooming across its arms to sync with human neural patterns. But as the session convened, debating the fallout from the Krellian blockade, the lost colonies, the strained alliances, Ilara caught Lyra's eye. The ambassador's triumph was tempered. Restoring the seat came at a cost. Their shuttle was crippled, comms fried from the hacks, and word of their arrival would draw scavengers to Earth's forgotten outposts. Humanity's return wasn't a fanfare, it was a spark in the dark, fragile and hard one. Jax sidled up to Ilara as the debates dragged on. "We did it," he said, voice low. "But what's next? They think we're ghosts." She nodded, watching Lyra negotiate with the fervor of someone who'd clawed back from oblivion. "We rebuilt. One alliance at a time." Outside, through the viewport, stars wheeled onward, indifferent. The galaxy had trembled, but now it listened, wary, waiting for what humans might forge from the empty space they'd reclaimed.